Are you aware you can send emails directly from your HF rig and a PC to anyone you want? And there's multiple ways of doing it. I can use what is known as nodes or gateways, which connects through the internet, and send it either from my radio to your radio, or I can actually send it to your Gmail account, Outlook account, whatever, and they can respond back. Pretty cool? Wait, there's more. What happens if there's no internet? Well, you can still send emails, and it's known as peer-to-peer. So in today's video, I'm going to break it down, give you the overview, walk you through the setup, and actually do demonstrations of both using what is nodes or gateways, the internet connection, to make those emails go through, or better yet, radio to radio, mano on mano, peer to peer. So if this sounds of interest to you, let's get started. Hey, this is MJ, call sign KW3KW, and welcome to another episode of Ham Radio Made Simple. I'm continuing the series on ham radio for prepping, episode number 9, and this is part 6 on the digital HF modes. Today I'll be focusing on specifically WinLink as a top prepper mode, and however I'll show you all the aspects within WinLink Express itself. So if you're liking these videos, getting value from it, please hit the like button so others can find it easier than you did, as well as hit the subscribe and put comments in. And if there's any tips and tricks that you found or issues that you have with using WinLink, please post them below, and I'll definitely follow up on them, and hopefully others will read your tips too. As far as today's agenda, what is WinLink Express? I'll talk about the internet's version of it versus not having to use the internet, which is the side I prefer. How do you set this thing up? And I'll get into a live demo of WinLink in the 3 different categories of using the gateways, going from your radio to a general email address such as Gmail or Yahoo, radio to radio, as well as peer-to-peer, which does not use the internet. And I'll wrap this all up with a summary. So what exactly is WinLink Express? Well, it's simply a radio email client platform. And it's been out for quite a while now. I believe it actually was originated for maritime, for the sailors, to be able to reach out into the ships. But you see the checkerboard icon to the right, that is typically the logo that most people will recognize. Now, it can operate with or without the internet. Most people today use the internet options. So essentially, you download these channel lists, and I'll show you all of this when I get into the demo. But you have to make sure when you do these channel lists that you update it on a regular basis, because what you download is what you downloaded at that current conditions of reliability paths, because it'll show you which is the most optimal path and to choose what channel on what frequency. But if you don't update it often enough, you're going to be thinking, okay, it looks good. But really, since the time you downloaded it, yes, it is a station, but it's not necessarily based on the propagation conditions that is showing on the reliability path. Now, from a prepper standpoint, this is what I use without the internet. I do the peer-to-peer, and again, I'll be demonstrating that shortly. It does have high resistance to QRM and QRN, and understand this. This is used by emergency services all over the place. This is one of their go-to, digital apps that are out there today. ARES, RACES, they use it all the time, incorporated into their policies and procedures. And it does allow for attachments, which in these groups like to use specific forms that they will send. And it's used a lot, believe it or not, on the 2-meter side. Now, who created this? The Amateur Radio Safety Foundation, based out of Florida. They're the ones that basically created it. It is free, but every now and then you're going to get the link over that you see on the bottom right-hand side here, where it's going to ask you to register. Hit the remind me later if you don't want to donate it. It pops up every now and then, but they will prompt you to see if you're willing to donate it, and it's something you might want to do. Now, don't forget the FCC 97.309 rules apply. So it does prohibit, for example, using this to make money off your businesses or, trying your own personal gain off of this. This is basically for radio amateurs, emergency services, etc. And again, the same things about, the language, deceptive words, hidden meanings, all that stuff is in there. So just be aware. This is just, a lot of times we look at this, it's email. So it doesn't apply to the voice side of the FCC 97.309 rules. It does. So when we talk about installation requirements, obviously you got to get your rig set up for the data mode. Then you got to do your Windows setup if you're doing Windows. And I did a whole video on Windows setup from A to Z. The link is in the description below. I'm not going to get into it. So watch that. And I even have one for failure points we're doing with setup on some of these digital modes. So I actually have two videos, and I'll include those in the links on there. But just want to point out, when you're setting up your Windows settings, make sure under the power settings, no shutdown, no hibernation. Because if you're trying to leave this on for a period of time and all of a sudden you go into hibernation or you go into a shutdown mode, it's done. You're not going to get anything. So basically, if you plan on using this, change your power settings. It also could be used on Linux. And if you want to find out how that's done, check out KMac for the settings. This guy is one sharp guy, especially when it comes to Linux. A lot of his videos are very, very good. So you may want to check out some of his other videos that are out there. Probably one of the best, I think. It can also be used on the iOS for a Mac, and believe it or not, you can do it on an iPhone. So how do you download this stuff? Well, with WinLink Express, the link will be in the description below. This is what you want to do. And go to the site. It's going to give you the WinLink Express install, and it'll have the most current one up to date. Now, for VARA HF, where you want to go is to this website. And you can see, they'll even tell you, this is version 4.7.4 is the latest release as of the time of this recording on there. And this is also going to be the place where you're going to pay for the upgraded license, which I'll get into in a little bit here. So I'm going to kind of break this down into three areas. The first thing is to understand that the internet gateway stations are basically, a ham radio operator tied in to the internet, or they can actually be, without the internet, they can actually be a relay between you and them, and then to a site that actually happens to have a gateway. And that's what is known as radio to radio. And I'll explain more about that a little bit here in a few moments. But bottom line is, you need to download the channels, and you can work offline. If you're going to go out and do, go out to the parks or go climbing or hiking, don't try to do the radio download. It'll just drain your power, take too much time. Make sure you download all the channel listings before you go out. And by the way, this uses Amazon Cloud Services, which is up 99.97% of the time. But if the power goes out in that area, the internet goes out, you're hosed. And so this is what the channel selector looks like, and we'll get into that into the demo. And some of the things you may want to look at here is, for example, you can look, here's the call sign, here's the frequency. So you can actually click on the frequency specifically if you're going to sort by it. Here's the speed, whether it be 500. Now the 2750, you have to have the tactical upgraded license. 2300 is normal. It's a standard which most people use. If you want to go by grid square, if you want to, public is on all of them. Distance from where you at, and bearings. And if you don't know the bearings degrees from where you're at, when I show you the map functions, you'll understand what that number means. Because at first I didn't understand it, but it makes a lot more sense once you see the map option that you have within this program here. And here's the map. And so it works really, really nice to use this, especially in the beginning when you're trying to figure out some of your favorite stations that you want to basically save. Now on peer-to-peer, you don't have the channels, you don't have the map. It's basically direct email by call sign. So my call sign to your call sign, it sends it mail, but we both have to be online at the same time to be able to receive it. And I'll break that down here too. So when we look at it, there's two ways to operate. You can go call sign to call sign, and this is the channels. Or I can, which basically, or I can go call sign to email. So call sign to email, which is pretty cool, is basically I can go to my Gmail or your Outlook account or your Yahoo account from my radio. And that's one way of doing it, or from your radio to my radio is another way of doing it. Now, when we look at the different, I call them transmission protocols or sound card modems, you're going to hear different terminology. It's the same thing. The setups are completely different. So what you do for AirDop, which was the predecessor to VARA, and that's one of the transmission protocols or sound card modems, it's set up totally different. So just because you think you got VARA set up, you can just switch over to AirDop. That's not going to be the case. Very specific setups for each of these different protocols. So let's show you how this works. Here I am in Raleigh trying to connect Ben, WO0BAM in Johnson City, Tennessee. And I'm trying to use some of the channels on it. So I have to download the channel list. And what the channel list is going to do, once I select on it, it's connected to what is known as an RMS, or radio message server, with an internet connection. And it uses the internet, and it goes to a common message server where the messages are saved, and then it sends it out through that. So it is being connected, yes, by your radio, but when you're doing through the channels on the internet, it's actually going through this a more complex process, but it does work quite well. Now, again, understand the messages are stored on the Amazon Cloud Services. Now, when you go peer-to-peer, it's totally different. You're not using any internet connections. It's basically mano on mano. MJ to Ben, we're going on peer-to-peer modem via WinLink. Okay, so we're going to use the WinLink system, and I'm going to use the VARA peer-to-peer one, and it will go from my inbox to Ben's inbox. But how does that work? Well, when I'm going call sign to call sign, that's how I'm going to set it up. Understand this, and this is important. Both stations must use the same transmission protocol. So I can't be using AirDop while he's using WinLink VARA. We've got to be on the same one. Second, got to be on the same frequency. So let's say we're doing 20 meters. We got to be both at the same frequency on 20 meters. Same session bandwidth. So, for example, if I'm doing the 2750 and he has also the upgraded license to 2750, then we both may have to make sure that the bandwidth settings on our rig goes to 2750, or like on my ICOM, I can get it to 2900. You can't have a smaller bandwidth because it's going to be being transmitted over a wider bandwidth. So again, same session bandwidth and same receiver bandwidth. So again, our receivers have to be set correctly. The bandwidth has to be set correctly. The frequency has to be the same, and the transmission protocol. And so both radios on. Sometimes you just walk away, wait till messages come into your inbox. It's not one of those. I can turn it on, send my messages, turn it off. Doesn't work that way. In order for my messages to get to Ben's messages, we both have to be on at the same time with the following criteria. Does that make sense? Oh, by the way, use prepping protocols. So again, there's been some great ones that are out there, but the bottom line is we're going to meet, if there's a problem, we're going to say 9:15 a.m. time or Central Time, whatever you pick. Here's the frequencies, here's the mode, here's the application. Everything is down. Backup in case that one's busy, and whether it be a different frequency, whether it be a different, let's say even going to, for example, FLDigi, FSQ. Whatever you're doing when you get into these prepping protocols, you've got to have backup contingencies in place, but also what time, how we're going to meet, how we're going to do it, what's our settings. Now, I'm going to break it down into the second one here. And when you try to look at WinLink, think of it as these, they call them sound card modems or transmission protocols. And if you pull down within WinLink here, when you go under open sessions, you can see, for example, this is all the ones that are requiring internet connections, and they're going to go to the RMS servers. So whether it be Packet, Pactor, AirDop, which was the latest, most people have switched to VAR because it's basically faster and better right now. It's the latest one. Iridium Geo is actually for satellite phones. So you can actually use satellite phones. You can use this WinLink application on. When you're going peer-to-peer, again, you have to pick specifically which one do you want of these sound card modems or transmission protocols. Typically, it's going to be the VARA HF P2P. So the ones that are out there today, Telenet, which you're going to see that's going to be used on the iOS system for your iPhone. Packet is still being used. Pactor is still out there. But again, people went to AirDop after that, and now most have switched over to the VARA. So those are the different ones. So you think, okay, is there a difference of them? Yeah, different iterations, and the VARA is the latest, best, and the fastest. Now, again, setup for each of these transmission protocols is unique. So just because I set up VARA doesn't mean those settings will work on any of the other sound card modem settings. And just to give you an idea here, when you look at some of this stuff, there's some other services out there that offer like Outpost, Airmail, Radio Mail, PackLink, and there you can do some comparisons on it. But for the most part, most people have gone to WinLink because it's the best. And it shows you which ones carry which particular type of services out there. So Outpost does not do VARA HF and VARA FM, which is the 2-meter analog. but the WinLink Express does all of these. So again, just kind of a chart to let you know there's other services out there, but why you want to go to WinLink. And so we're going to look for the VARA and the VARA HF and the VARA FM. Now I want to break this down into a third part is talk about VARA specifically. So not only do we talk about what WinLink is, what are the sound card modems, now we're going to talk about a specific sound card modem, and that's VARA. And it's free, but you're going to get a slower version off of it. And they do offer a 2-meter version, which is the 9600, which is considered wide, and the 1200, which is narrow. And it gets, again, if you have the license, it's faster with it. Get the upgrade. I'll show you that in another slide or two. On the VARA HF, you can go from 6 meters to 160 meters. It has 3 speeds. Standard is the 2300, 500 is more narrow. But if you pay for the tactical license, you can do the 2750. Most people I know are using this, upgraded to the 2750. And so, since it's much faster, you get a faster speed, pay for the upgrade. I'll be doing another video on the VARA AC, which is an HF fast chat mode. And again, that license, if you get it for the VARA HF, does apply to the VARA AC. So again, it's a nice reason why to buy it. Again, this site here that you see I'll have the link below in the description. This is where you want to go to download the latest version of VARA HF. This is, by the way, the site of the creator of it. I think the fee is $69 of what I paid. What it is today, when the time you're watching this video, I don't know, but it was $69 when I bought it. So when we look at the purchasing of the license in here, how do you do it? Well, once you download the VARA, and this is the VARA application. The WinLink are 2 other windows, which I'll get into, but this is the VARA HF 4.7.2. So if you go under the help function and you go down to buy a license, buy a VARA license, this is going to pop up. And this is where you put your call sign to walk you through the payment process. And it typically takes about 2 days to get it. Okay, they'll email you the registration key in 2 days. So you're going to enter the registration key. And again, through the video, the demo, I'll show you this. But essentially, you're going to go back to the site, to settings. You're going to go to VARA setup, and you're going to put your registration key right in here. Hit close. And at that point on, it remembers it across any VARA application. So really, really nice, easy to do. So when we start talking about actually transmitting when you're using the gateways, the channel selection in here, you're going to get a green bar when it's actually working. And if it's going in this direction, this is going into my inbox. I'm receiving, so I'm getting messages into my inbox. If it went the other way, I'd be sending. So it's first going to send. Green's going to left to right. Receiving is going right to left. By the way, once you find a channel that works for you, hit the select and put it into your favorites so you don't have to find it and hunt it again. So use favorites. And this is where you're going to save your channels you'll probably use more often than not. Use the maps option, which is really nice. And I'll again explain a little bit about more of that when we get into it here. So I think at this time we're ready to do the setup of the WinLink VARA HF system. Okay, you've downloaded WinLink Express and you've downloaded VARA, which you see over here, the 2 icons over here. This is, you're all set to go. Your Windows settings should have been done before any of this. And I did a video on how to set up your Windows settings for HF Digital, and it's in the link below. Your rig control, obviously, I don't know everyone's rig, but if you have the FT891 or the ICOM 7300, I have a step-by-step settings for each of those rigs. Otherwise, go to your manufacturer's site or, find out on YouTube if there's something out there, or just Google it even, and look for the correct settings for your rig. That's important. But so let's assuming now that your Windows settings are working, your rig settings are working, now we can launch the program, and let's get set up. So I'm going to go ahead and launch WinLink Express. There we go. I'm going to open this up. There's a couple things up here. First thing we're going to do is go to Settings, and there's a WinLink Express setup, and this is where you fill in your call sign. You're going to create your password, one-time password. You can have a recovery email. You're going to have to put in your grid square location. For you guys who are new and don't know where you can get that, you can go to QRZ.com, look up your call sign, and go ahead and register for it too while you're doing it. and look under your details, under your call sign, and it should have your grid square. You want to make sure you put in your information. I don't have it all complete. I'm going to get a flag here, a pop-up window. It's going to tell me to finish it, but you don't have to. Look at the other settings, hit the update. Now it should get me, yep, it's going to ask me if I want to finish filling in all the contact information. I'm saying no, I'll come back at a later time. So that's the very first thing you want to do is go under the settings here in this screen. If you look in here, this is where your drop down is. So if you're trying to use the internet gateways for your email, then you're going to look up in this tab right in here. But since I'm trying to do peer-to-peer with HF Vara, this is mine that I'm going to select. And as soon as I hit open sessions, it's going to open up two other windows. Here's the first window, and here's the second. This is the Vara window. This is still WinLink Express over here. So I'm going to go under settings. I'm going to go under radio setup, and I'm going to put in my rig. You just, from the drop down, you put in your rig. You're going to put in, with ICOM, I know what my default address is for my IC7300. It was in my rig setup. That's where I pulled this number from. Make sure you click the digital. You put your COM port in. Mine is COM port 3. My baud rate, 38.4, matches my rig, matches my USB codec driver, and it matches the software. All three have to match, so they're 38.4. And again, you have to do under push to talk here. It says optional. It is not. You have to put in your rig again from the drop down that you see. And whether it be my FT891, I have to do the same thing. Don't worry about the baud rate being grayed out. Hit the update, and that's part one of the settings in here. So it's going to refresh. It's going to pull the screens back up again, and we're going to go back to here. So under settings here, we're going to go with the Vara setup in here. Now, I have paid for the tactical or, the upgraded version, the full license of for Vara. So if you didn't, you're going to see something like this pop up. And and I'll show you later on where to put in your registration key, you want to come back to here, and you want to make sure that you get the full bandwidth out of here. That's 2750, enable the bandwidth, hit the update, and you're done with this area. Now we're going to go to one other area, and I'll show you where you need to fill that out and come back and pull that back in. So now actually under the Vara application, this is WinLink, this is WinLink up here, this is Vara. So we're going to go under the Vara settings, and I'm going to go first the Vara setup. Here is my registration key. I got emailed to me about 2 days after I paid for it. That's all you need to put in is your call sign and the registration key. Hit close. It will remember it. And it also works for Vara AC, which is really nice. So I get that in. Then the next one I'm going to do is my sound card. Here's what you want to do is do the microphone. It's going to be the USB codec. And if you're using like the DigiRig, for example, it will show you the USB plug and play or PNP. That's your choice. So for most internal sound cards, you should see the USB codec. And with the SignaLink, I believe you're going to see the USB codec also. But if you see the plug and play, that's the one also too. So same thing you're going to do on your speaker from the drop down. Now, if everything works, if you hit the tune button, you should hear your rig engage. And mine does engage, my IC7300. And this is where you would adjust your ALC level. You want it 1/3. This is perfect. I already have mine set up. As I look at my rig, that's exactly what it looks like within the settings on my rig. So I'm going to hit the stop, and I'm going to hit the close. And at this point, you are all set up. This is the setup that needs to take place. So next, I'm going to actually get in, and we'll do a demo on both peer-to-peer as well as using the internet gateways. Okay, in this section, what we're going to do is show you how to use WinLink using a node or gateway internet to move messages across. So obviously, you're going to go to your checkerboard, WinLink Express icon, launch it. This is the first window that comes up. First thing you're going to want to do is create a new message, and you can go under New Message here, or you can go under Message and New Message here. Either way, doesn't matter. Multiple ways to do this. This is where you're going to put two. You're going to put your subject, your email body, and if you want to put an attachment in. Just to save time, I've actually created one, so I'm just going to go to my outbox right up in here. I'm going to pull this up, And here's an example of one that I created. And this is KW3KW at gmx.com. Now, I can actually go to, for example, at Steve at KE2KN or Ben at WO0BAM, and I can put their call sign in, and it'll go directly to their WindLink Express email box based off of their call sign. And the other option is, like I'm doing here, send it to a third-party server like Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo. Mine happens to be GMX, so it does work. So you put your subject in, put your body in. What you're going to have to do is choose every time you do this. Make sure you pay attention. This is a WindLink message. If I was doing peer-to-peer, I'd have to put peer-to-peer. Radio-only message is a hybrid between the two, which we're not going to get into. But for today, we're going to show you on this section here how to use the gateways or nodes that are out there. I would leave the request message receipt blank. That just adds another couple lines of transmission, both to and from, which takes up more time. Because remember, when I'm sending this, not only am I sending my messages, I'm also receiving held messages out at one of the servers that are out there to download back into my inbox. So it's sending and receiving when I take this, and it just adds more time to it. So be careful if you want to check that. Once I get all this information in, I can post to the outbox, which I'm going to do. And actually, you can do spell check, by the way, too. If you want to do an attachment, most people do attachment, for example, our ARES, RACES, these different emergency group services. You can just hit attach, you can hit add, and from my form file, for example, if I had the ICS 213 data form that I have in here, it's a standard form, a situation report type form. If it's filled out, I've saved it, I can attach it and send that off. I'm going to cancel. But that's essentially what you're trying to do. Is if you want to attach it, it's usually forms that are out there. So I'm set with where I want to send it. The call sign's good. Post to outbox. So now it's in my outbox. I actually have another message here, which you can see. I can pull this one up. Can show you that, for example, you can actually do both. Here is a call sign, my call sign, and my personal third-party email site. Just for now, I'm going to move this message just to show you that you can how to move messages. So I can take this, and I want to move this basically into drafts. I'm going to send this again later if I have to. And so I go move to, I selected drafts or whatever I want to put it, and then I right mouse click and move to folder selected above. At this point, it went over to my drafts. And this is how, for example, from your inbox, you got messages there, and you want to move them to whether it be your own personal folders, which you simply right mouse click, type in your personal folder, update it, and I created 2 of them, and I can actually keep my files that I want right in here, saved and stored for a later time. So this is how you have your personal folders and everything working. So at this point, what I want to do is go ahead and make sure that I'm using the right means, which is VARA HF WindLink, because I went with a WindLink. I'm using VARA HF. Now I'm going to click on, we have an outbox one, remember right here? I'm going to go open session. Anything that's in your outbox is going to go at this time. 2 windows open up. This is the WindLink HF VARA session, and this is actually the VARA HF software. So we have the 2 right in here. This is telling me everything launched, everything is ready to go. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is go to channel selection, and you want to update via the internet. If you are out in the field, you don't want to do update via radio. It takes forever. You're going to burn through a lot of time and power on your batteries to do it. Before you leave, update via the internet. It's going to run down through the list. It's going to give you what stations are up and running and the path reliability and your path quality estimate. Once you have that up and running, I usually select path quality estimate as my sort filter. You can do path, red means bad, yellow means maybe, but I'm going to go back, and if I click it twice, I pull it back to the sort to the top. So this is what I'm looking for. The degrees tells me in location. It's almost due north from you, it's going to be 0, 1, and then it goes like 390 all the way around from the left, counterclockwise. 024 is going to be up in the top right corner northeast of me. But this way it helps you understand where the bearings are. If you understand that, this is the distance. What I'm looking for specifically for me is 2 things. The reliability path, and I want to make sure my frequency and my mode is correct. So I want 30 meters, and I want to get to 2750 because I have the extended license, so it's going to go faster. So once I'm all set, I can go ahead and hit select right here or double click here. But I want to show you something. There's a map function that's out there that you can pull up, and here is actually my location, KW3KW, and anything relationship to me, this is the bearings is 348, and if I come over here, it's bearings is 030. So it's like, okay, here's just think of a clock going around, and it gets larger, and that starts over, and it goes lower. So when you see the bearings, it's going to tell you, the threes are going to be to the northwest, and the lower number is going to be to the northeast, etc. But I can actually look and see what's out there and what's the path quality and all the other stuff that's out there. So great way to look at it and be able to decide which of these channels that you want to select. So I'm going to go ahead and just close that out. That was under the maps that you saw right in here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit select. Now I saved this one to my favorites. Once you find the ones that you like, hit this add to favorites, and for the next time you don't have to pull that up. You can go right into your favorites and select that. So easy way to do it. Once that's all done, all I need to do is go ahead and hit the start. And what's gonna happen is it's gonna do the acknowledge until the data gets solid green. And then it's gonna tell me, yep, we've got a connection, and you'll see something. This is calling WA3MEZ. And this is gonna usually take about 15 tries before it maxes out. Don't be surprised if it's a failure to connect. That happens to me probably more than I do connect. And especially if you know today the band conditions, if we go in here, 30 meters is poor. And so typically I could go 15 to 20 watts. Now I'm up to 35 watts in order to break through in here. So you may have to adjust your power based on the band conditions, the distance, propagation, all of that. So just be aware of that. So it looks like we're going to connect here shortly. We've got it. Yep, WinLink connection has been established. And now it's going to do the acknowledgement. Now what you're going to see is the transmission and then the receive cycle. So these are packets. This all gets solid red, means all the packets. You'll see skips in between them, which basically means a packet has to be resent because it wasn't complete. It's going to run through this whole cycle in here. Up here at the top, once this is pretty much done, it's going to start to go green from left to right to transmit. Receiving side of it's going to go from right to left, green going this way. Once it crosses all the way across, then it's done with the transmission or the receiving section of it. So while this is going on, let me point out a few things that I want to show you. Under settings right up in here, what I want you to do is go to settings, and I want you to go to preferences. And down here is where you can change from kilometers to miles. And anytime you make a change, you hit the update. And, include your location in the message header, which I put in. Viewing seconds before making a message read, I put into whatever you want to do. But this is where you make that change, so I get that question asked. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel since I already did it, and I'm in transmission. Notice the green is going across nicely, and we should be done here. And let me pull up in here, so we're still seeing that it's moving across. This is all good. Typically, I think it's going to take about 3 to 4 minutes on trying to do this. Other settings that I have in here I wanted to show you. If I go into this settings under radio setup, the earlier section I showed you, I had the 7300 listed here. You can also do the CIV for the 7300. If you have, like, for example, the Zygo or Zygu G90, which Jim, one of my friends out there, KO4UGF, he figured out, again, doing his research out there from other people, that if you have something that's not in the drop-down, for example, there is no Zygu G90 on here, you can substitute it with the ICOM 7100 for that particular line of products, or at least that particular rig that I know of, which he did. So he selected the 7100, and he put the CIV file in with his COM port and baud rate. Make sure you enable RTS and enable DRT, hit the update, and at that point, he was good to go. Now, the ICOM address is specific to the ICOM. I don't think you're going to see that with some of these other settings. But just FYI, beyond my ICOM 7300, you can use some of the other ones that are out there, and you might want to use the CIV. Try that out. Now, you can see here, it took, session was 2.6 minutes to send that message, which wasn't too bad considering how bad the conditions are. and it's pretty easy to do. So I've showed you how to move folders, how to set messages, how to check the right type of channel that you want to use, how to sort through it, how to add to your favorites. And if we're doing peer-to-peer in the next session, you'll see me working over here, switch to peer-to-peer. So simple, once you get it down, the key is saving to your favorites, and it'll save you a lot of time once you know what some of these nodes that work best for you and different frequencies based on your band conditions. So that's it for now. Let's move on to the next section and do peer-to-peer. Okay, you can see now that my outbox is empty and the message was sent. And let me just go ahead and pull up over here. Let's see how long it took here. It said almost 4 minutes to send that message. And again, the band conditions aren't the best today, but just you kind of get a feel and flavor for what's happening. So this is what it's going to look like at the end. And if I go to my inbox here, here's the message that we sent. I open it up. This is a really cool way of sending emails. So you can see it actually does work. And I can go from my HF radio to my normal email account that's on there, as well as you can go radio to radio. And the radio to radio means it's just you're gonna pull up the message within the WinLink Express itself. So in this next section, we're just gonna go ahead and just jump into the peer-to-peer. So if you have any questions, make sure you feel free to email me at hamradiomadesimple@gmail.com. Okay, now we're gonna move to the peer-to-peer session. And this will be pretty short and pretty sweet. What we need to do is, like we always do, is go ahead up here to a new message, create a new message. And since I want to make this quicker for you, I went ahead and posted one already in my outbox. So I'll show you what I did different. On this one, what you've got to do is, here's the call sign. It's going to Jim at K04 UGF. From the drop down here, it has to be peer-to-peer. That's important. Put your message in, hit post to outbox. Now we're going to go over here and make sure that we're doing the VARA HF peer-to-peer. That has to be selected. And simply hit open session. Now, Jim is standing by, and he's on center dial frequency 3590, dial frequency 3588.500. And we're all set to go. His call sign, you notice, is right up in here. So everything should be sent. All I have to do now is hit start. And so we're going to hit the start. And I'll just take this in a few minutes here, and then I'll probably edit out some of this so you don't have to watch for 3 minutes of the signal going through. But what we're trying to do, just to show you when the connection happens, and then I'll come back later on it. But here we have now the peer-to-peer connection. So he has to be on. So K04 UGF, we have to be on the same frequency, okay, at the same time, and we have to be in the peer-to-peer mode. And if you see down right in here, down below the waterfall, we both have to be at the same kilohertz, 2750. So, or hertz, 2750. So what we essentially got going here is 3 touch points right here. Because you can have a session at 500, 2300, or if you pay for the tactical license, it's 2750. So both of us either have to be 2750, 2300, or 500 in order for this to work. If one of us is on a different one, it doesn't work. Failure point. So make sure this is one of those places that people get frustrated. This has to match with what K04 UGF is using. So you can see it's data's being sent across. Typically, it's going to take about 3 minutes on doing this. And the frequency bands right now are, I can pull that up here. And let's go ahead and do QRZ. And we can look and see for 80 meter fair, under fair conditions. And I think I'm at 35 watts. And I believe Jim was sending me, he was at 20 watts. And he was sending okay to me. So just so that you guys understand what the band conditions are. But here we go, just making sure. And you're going to see, here's the thing you need to understand. There's two parts of this. There is, I call it the two computer sessions syncing together. So HFR and HFR are sync, then the message gets sent, and then he is receiving, end of session. So this one only took 2 minutes, which is pretty good. The thing I also noticed is that he had, and I'm going to go to my inbox over here, and he had a message that was in his outbox, and I picked it up. And here it is. And he goes, download peer-to-peer, and he said, test from KO4 UGF. So I'm able to not only send the message, but I can pick up what's in his outbox and bring it back to here. So now you can start to see the value of the peer-to-peer. You don't need the internet. 2 minutes was pretty good, to be honest with you, to get a message and pick up a message. And the band was fair, 35 watts for me, 20 watts for Jim. So hopefully this helps you. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the comments below, and have fun doing this. So quickly, let's kind of run through the summary here. So what did we learn today? Well, why are we going to choose WinLink, specifically VARA HF? Well, it's a point-to-point messaging service that's pretty robust and has pretty good speed. It's private as far as HF goes. There's nothing really private in the HF world, but it's when you do point-to-point, it's not being necessarily picked up by other people out there as easily. It can offer the option of the internet where it can save your messages, or you can go to no internet, which is the peer-to-peer for us preppers. As features, we can look at it has an email inbox that messages will be pushed down to. You can send, receive messages, forward emails, and send files pretty easily on this. And again, some tips on it. You want to make sure you upgrade to the tactical license, which will cover both the VARA HF and the VARA AC, which is the next video. Make sure you check your band conditions, because that's going to make a difference on the timing and the speed and what you're able to connect to. Again, to understand the color codes. You know, the red in the channels basically means bad, yellow means maybe, and green means should be good to go, not necessarily. Don't forget to make sure you save your channels to the favorites and get used to using the map so you can understand when it's saying a bearing of 288 degrees, what is that in relationship to where you are? And once you know that, because like for me, I tend to do better with my antenna setup going south and southwest. So I'm probably better off trying to find the different channels that are located more in that direction. Again, some cool things about this, and hopefully you have some more tips you might want to put in the comments below. So my next video is going to be on VARA AC, just like I did on here. And I'm open for suggestions on anything you think you might want me to cover. I can do the research on and try to break it down into simple terms and some more, I call it, basic fundamentals and features that you want to know about. Again, if you stayed this long, you got to hit that like and the subscribe button and throw a comment in. I really appreciate that. But again, this is MJ with Ham Radio Made Simple, call sign KW3KW, thanking you for watching these videos. Out.